Hello and welcome. You're about to watch a whole school college approach to wellbeing for senior leaders and managers as part of the Wellbeing Education Resilience Programme. We'd like to draw your attention to the Face COVID video by Russ Harris. If you haven't watched it already, it would be great to take 5 minutes to do so. It covers a wide range of ways to support wellbeing in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. You can click on the link below when you're watching the accompanying PowerPoint presentation when it's in slideshow mode.
This is the second video in the Watch element of the WER programme. It focuses on the whole school approach. There may be key concepts that are touched upon very briefly in this video that are explained further in much more detail in the Concept Index video. These are marked with a blue star with CI in the middle. Should you want any further information or have any questions on anything covered in this webinar, you can book on to one of our Q&A conferences. This webinar will cover the following topics: expectations of schools in relation to wellbeing, the importance of relationships, key values for whole school and a stick of rock analogy, a model for integrating emotional wellbeing themes throughout your whole school, policies into practice or practice into policies, which direction will your journey take, looking after your staff team, and the role of the mental health lead in your school and the school wellbeing service. If you see this symbol, the speech bubble with activity in the middle, please pause the video if you wish to take time to do the suggested activity or reflection. We will tell you the right time to pause. Also, ensure you are being kind to yourself while watching this video. Be aware of your emotions and how you're feeling throughout. If at any time you feel like you need to take a break or a pause, please do so. If you feel the need, seek support from a friend or a colleague or a family member. Or if you'd like to seek further support, there is information on the final slides of how you can do so.
A question that you might get asked or you might ask of yourself is how the WER programme can help your school or college to achieve a whole school approach to wellbeing. And here are some ideas about how it can do that. We've really thought about how we can use these resources and produce these resources for you to use to accompany your journey as a school or college, and to build on the good practice and the excellent work that's already going on in Thurrock schools around the promotion of wellbeing and positive mental health. We've listened to feedback from schools and school staff about what can help them, particularly in the current climate. We know that schools are keen to be supported and to have professionals to support them and their school staff and their systems. But increasingly, it's also very difficult for schools to consider training sessions when staff are doing various things during the day. It's difficult to get all of the staff together. So we've designed these for staff to use and access flexibly, for you to be able to watch the presentations or the videos as and when you can, and to be able to revisit them as needed. We're hoping these will be a starting point for a set of resources that we can build on over time and contribute to. It'd be great to add to our resources some practical examples of how schools in Thurrock are putting these ideas into practice, and that would be really excellent for us to be able to grow the resources on the WER programme site.
We understand that schools will want to implement the WER programme in different ways. You will have different ways of working and you will have different needs. As a senior member of staff within your school or the member of staff leading on the WER programme, there are several ways you can do this. You can share the link with all of your staff and ask them to watch, and then you can log who has watched what video. You can watch videos during staff meetings and log how many staff have attended. You could use relevant videos or targeted training based on the needs of your school. So you can select what videos you think are most relevant to your school and watch those ones. You could plan video or presentations and resources into your CPD sessions. So again, you may want to think about what's relevant for CPD coming up and just watch them as and when you think is appropriate. So next we'll be looking at the role of the mental health lead in the WER programme. So as the mental health lead within your school, you have several responsibilities. So in the watch element of the WER programme, you'll be expected to be familiar with the WER webinars and presentations and promote these within your staff in your school. You also need to ensure that there is a log being kept of who has watched what video. In terms of the Ask and Share section of the WER programme, you need to be either signposting your staff to or arranging attendance of staff to the Q&A sessions, or you can attend our Q&A conferences yourself and bring with you feedback or questions that have been submitted by staff in your school. You also need to be able to coordinate feedback from staff when the evaluations take place. Throughout this webinar, you will have the option to watch videos of Stuart Holmes, Deputy Head Teacher of Abbots Hall Primary Academy, talking about their journey of successfully incorporating mental health and wellbeing into their school ethos using a whole school approach. This is a great opportunity to hear from a colleague who has experience of the whole school process. The next few slides have quotes and statements from the official guidance documents that outline the expectations of schools around mental health and wellbeing. We have made these easily accessible in one place for you, and throughout this webinar we'll be giving you advice on how to achieve them. So please take your time to read through them and assess how far your school meets these. If you're accessing this through the PowerPoint presentation, there is also further information in the notes for you to look through should you wish. You may want to pause the PowerPoint or video in order to do this.
Most important thing we did at
In these
Abbots Hall
first two
Primary School
videos, Stuart
was
will be
make sure that we
explaining
got
how Abbots
everybody
Hall they
on board
started the
with us from the
process
very
of
beginning.
incorporating mental health
That
and
included the
well-being
head
into their
teacher. She was
ethos.
really engaged
If
with
you
us,
have the
and
time, it'll be
also the
really good
senior
for you
leadership
to
team.
watch these videos,
I
but if
myself
you
am
are
the
very
mental health
limited on
wellbeing
time,
lead, and I
do
am the
feel free
deputy head
to
teacher
skip
at
to the
Abbots Hall.
next
So
slide.
straight away we've got somebody who's on the senior leadership team that is driving the importance of mental health and wellbeing through the whole school. We also made sure that we've got our governors on board through every step of the way. So that was regularly meeting with them and bringing up the issues of mental health and wellbeing, telling them our vision and how we're going to proceed. The best thing that we did, and this did come from our head teacher, was she saw an award called the Wellbeing Award for Schools, or WAS, and that's done by the National Children's Bureau, a registered award, and that gave us a real clear path of how to focus our mental health and well-being. We had to appoint a well-being team, and we did that through lots of different people in our school community. It was run by me, but we had people from our pastoral team, we had teachers, we had TAs, so we had a wide range of people on our well-being team from the very beginning. What the Wellbeing Award for Schools does, it sets out clear objectives of how you can make mental health and well-being at the heart of your school. And it gives you a clear path and a clear focus of how you can do that. And they are achievable objectives. So it gave us a focus, and that's where we began our journey. It's important as well that you have clear messages for all your school community. So that's the parents, that's the staff, and that's the students. We decided whatever messages we were giving to one group, we would give to the other groups as well. So we changed our motto at Abbott's. We changed it to, we are all academically, socially and emotionally prepared for our own unique journey. And the reason why we changed it, we wanted to give equal weight to the academic, the social and the emotional. So we've changed that. We've put that on all posters all around the school and on our website and things like that. And then as a school, as an inset in September, we introduced that motto, and then we decided as an SLT, we needed to bring some Abbott's values. So our core values, what do we want to live by or teach by? What do we want to see in our school on a daily basis? So we developed them as a staff. So that's giving the staff ownership of those values because it came from them. So we've got, like loads of schools have, you've probably got your own values, but we've got respect, resilience, responsibility, confidence, courage, and compassion. And we go by them regularly. We do things in school, things in class regularly, where children receive tokens for showing those values. And we have conversations about those values, and it feeds into our motto. One of the biggest things we did from the very beginning was give the message, it's okay to not be okay. That was a real focus point for us, where we could say, we could share it with the children, we could share it with parents, and we could share it with staff. So we did that with staff through training, through our own insets. We did it with the pupils during assemblies and through class-based things and through whole school events. We also did it with parents, and this is really to reduce the stigma throughout the whole school community, where we had drop-in sessions led by myself and the wellbeing team. We had coffee mornings. And again, these messages all went out on our school messaging service, Class Dojo, and our newsletters and our websites. We're also really, really big about the 5 ways to wellbeing. It's a real good focus for how you can promote the positive wellbeing. We regularly promote it in school. We regularly promote it with our parents, doing activities and weekly events, daily events, and just giving general tips and advice to any of our staff, parents or pupils about the 5 ways to wellbeing.
Some of these points that were explained by Stuart will be discussed further in the next few slides.
When thinking about what supports recovery when wellbeing is challenged, we need to really hold in mind that recovery is not something that just happens at a particular time at the moment. We are trying to recover from the various challenges that the COVID-19 pandemic have presented to education and to the teaching and learning for children and young people. But we need to remember that recovery is going to be an ongoing theme because we're still very much within the pandemic situation at the moment. So it's not a matter of, something's happened and now we're recovering. Actually, something is continuing to go on for us. So we need to think about recovery as an ongoing theme. It's thought that the majority of people will be able to manage the difficulties with their wellbeing that's particularly around COVID-19 have been presented. And there may be a smaller group that may need some additional support. We're not sure what timeline that might be. We have to check in with people, monitor how people are doing. We may need to think about children and young people who may be already vulnerable, as are maybe some members of staff whose needs might have escalated because of the current situation that they're in with COVID-19 pandemic. And thinking about mapping out who in your school might be vulnerable and who might need more support, and then checking that out with them just to see if they do. It may be that they have plenty of support within their networks around them currently. And we'll talk throughout lots of the presentations around these 5 key principles of recovery that put wellbeing and relationships right at the forefront. And we'll talk about how to recognise and support individuals who might need more support. And many of the other webinars and presentation videos in the WER programme go into more detail about these ideas. There's the concept index as well to go into more depth about some of the concepts that we cover. We have loss and bereavement. We have 4 different sections or aspects to the loss and bereavement content. We have the stress response, responding to distress, 5 R's to build resilience, and understanding anxiety and low mood. And all of those cover some of the themes here that we're talking about. These 5 key principles of recovery are very well used and really are integral to many of the themes and the content within the WER programme. So these 5 key principles of recovery we'll be revisiting and coming back to time and time again. The 5 principles of recovery look at different areas in which schools can respond to the challenges posed by COVID-19, the pandemic. And we want to put emotional wellbeing first for everybody. I know there's been lots of talks about how we will help children and people to catch up, what will happen about really significant events, experiences that they've lost in their learning, things like that. But the first step is around thinking about emotional wellbeing first. Secondly, it's about thinking about reaffirming the school's strengths and core values, and we'll talk a lot about core values and mindset throughout the WER programme. We want to place relationships front and centre because we know the healing quality of relationships, the way in which we get our basic human needs met through our relationships and our connections with others, and the importance of having a support network around us of people that we can rely on and seek out for support and fun and friendship, and how important that is to have that connectedness within schools. It's important for us to reaffirm for children, young people, for families, for staff, our safety, our routines, our boundaries. Things like this make us feel better, they make us feel secure, and they give us a structure and a guideline for how we need to behave when everything else seems to be going a little awry or being quite unpredictable. Having things that are predictable really help us to feel more settled. And it's really important to acknowledge the loss and changes that have happened and ongoing changes. Educational staff have been incredibly fluid and flexible in responding to these really sudden changes that have happened moment by moment throughout this pandemic. And they've really, just got on with it in terms of, thinking about what we need to do today, what we need to do for the children and young people, what we need to do for one another, what we do to support our school community, and have just got on with that. But it's really important to acknowledge those things and how much toll that can take on people and actually think about looking after people, which brings us nicely back to the first point again about coming back to the emotional wellbeing and put that first for everybody. So these 5 key principles of recovery work together to support our resilience, they enhance our wellbeing, they help us to think about who might need more support and to help us to support one another at the same time.
So this slide is the first slide of the section of this webinar where we're going to be looking at relationships and the importance of building relationships and how helpful they are for emotional support. So if we think to times where we may talk to a friend, a parent, a partner, when we're not feeling great, or even just when you may not realise you're not feeling great, just having those conversations, those connections with these people will always make you feel better. So it's the idea that it's not always about going to therapy to make yourself feel better. It's about doing those things that are therapeutic and being able to have a relationship with someone where you can be honest, open, kind, trusting. That is what's therapeutic, and relationships are one of the best thought forms of therapeutic support. So it's really important to really think about how can you build these relationships in your whole school approach. relationships among staff, among students, among parents, and those are interlinking. So thinking of trusting relationships between staff and students, trusting relationships between staff and their leadership, trusting relationships between parents and staff as well. All these things are really important, as I say, in terms of emotional support within schools. So we're going to look at some of the theory behind what makes relationships so important and so pivotal in building resilience and personal growth. It's the idea that every interaction is an intervention. So we learn through interactions and relationships. So mirroring, we learn for example, and modelling. So interactions enable our basic needs to be met. Repeated experiences become habits. These become wired in our brains, and this cycle increases the chances of us repeating these habits. These habits and wiring can improve and support resilience and well-being. So some of these concepts, for example, looking at basic needs, if you want to know a little bit more about those, they are in our staff wellbeing webinar, and you can also find them in our concept index. So when we're thinking about trying to change behaviours and change attitudes, maybe change people's feelings, emotions, etc., we don't look at changing the person. So it's the same as with a flower or a plant, as it's seen in this slide. If you want a plant to grow better, you don't change the plant, you change its environments. You might use a different soil, you might choose a fertiliser, you might put it somewhere in more sun, you might use more water, for example. This is the same with our young people, and not even say young people, with anybody. If you want to change their outlook, their behaviour, their effort levels, it could be their emotion. If you want them to be happier, for example, you don't change them, you need to change their environment. And we do that, we start that with relationships. So for example, you need to know that child and that student or that person to know how they're going to work best. You need to know what's going on for them so you know what to change. And for them to feel like they can cope with that change, there needs to be trust. So trust is really, really important. For them to go along with these changes, they need to trust that it's being done for the right reasons. Again, that comes through relationships. Lots of interactions build trust. If you're able to do that and make these changes for that young person, you can provide safety, trust, as I just spoke about, and learning. So you're creating the optimal environment for them to learn and be happy and healthy.
When thinking about values within your school, it's quite likely that you already have some already established. And in having your whole school approach to wellbeing, there may be some possible mindset shifts that you may need to think about as a whole school. And we have 3 sets of values that we promote, adapted from the work of Beacon House and Essex's trauma perceptive practice approach, that we're going to talk through with you now. So the first one is compassion and kindness rather than shame and blame. And the reason why we want to promote compassion and kindness is around based on the research and evidence of behaviour being a communication, and that it's needs led, and that when children, young people behave in certain ways, it's often as a response to stress or distress and feeling overwhelmed, and that behaviours are an indication of someone trying to cope with something that they're faced with. So within this mindset, solutions to problems are worked through using relational approaches. And there still may be consequences to behaviours, but they would be less emphasis or no emphasis on punitive approaches, because punitive approaches are more likely to shame and blame, and they don't actually have any founded research in changing behaviour. Secondly, we would advocate the idea and value of hope and the mindset shift away from hopelessness, talking about problems, talking about deficits, things that are going wrong, things that aren't okay. Yes, we need to be aware of what's not okay. So we think about the idea of keeping one foot in pain and one foot in possibility. So we've got that balance between thinking about what's not okay, but actually where are we heading to? Where do you want to go in the future? And to be very strengths-based within our approaches. We want to be able to strengthen and build on what's working well already. And if something is working well, let's try and do more of that. The third set of values is around connection and belonging, rather than disconnection, isolation, and exclusion. Relationships are absolutely key, and relationships are fundamentally central to anything around boosting well-being and positive mental health. Our sense of belonging, having a feeling of safety, strengthens identity. It strengthens our pride in ourselves and in our personal fulfillment. We know that our basic human needs are met via the social relationships and connections that we have with others. And trauma is often a relational problem and therefore requires emotional repair via connections that we have with other people. Now, sometimes when we talk about these sets of values, questions from people can be around, well, if we adopt these values, does that mean that we have to lessen our expectations around boundaries and consequences? And, will this, if we just come kind and compassionate, does that mean that we won't be expecting young people to develop and a sense of responsibility or to respect other people? And that's absolutely not the case. We fully advocate the idea of safety for all, of having strong, firm boundaries. We know that firm boundaries help to make children and young people feel secure and to feel safe, and they are important. And we do endeavour to teach children and young people abilities and skills that help them develop their sense of responsibility and to develop their feelings of respect for themselves and for other people and for belongings and property. So there isn't a situation where you have to relinquish any of that in order to be compassionate and kind. You can be compassionate and kind and positive and strengths-based, but still have strong boundaries and a strong sense of things that you want people to be doing and being very clear on things that are not okay. And that's still very much present within these values. When we're looking at a whole school and college approach to wellbeing and mental health, we can use this model of 8 principles. And these 8 principles have been derived from research and publications by Public Health England and Children and Young People's Mental Health Coalition. You need to use this to think about how to fit it in with pre-existing frameworks that you're already familiar with within your school or college. And think about how these 8 principles can complement or work alongside or overlap with things that you've already got. So if you've been working on healthy schools, development, something like that, these 8 principles will very much complement other frameworks that you've been using. The School's Wellbeing Service uses these 8 principles as a basis for action planning with your schools. So this should be something that you are quite familiar with. Leadership and management are central and integral to everything that happens within a school. And then around the outside of that, you've got different areas such as the ethos and environment, the curriculum and teaching and learning, student voice and how you listen to children and young people and their views and actually how they're acted upon, more importantly, staff development and staff's wellbeing, identifying need and monitoring impact of interventions for those who need extra support, working with parents and carers in your wider school community, and targeted support, how you work with other agencies to think about how to make appropriate referrals and how you can work with other agencies to maximise the support that you are able to receive for your children and young people. Your values that your school have, so we're hoping to promote the idea of compassion, kindness, hope, connection and belonging, plus the 8 principles that we've just looked at. These should be evident throughout your entire school community just like we use the analogy of a stick of rock. So if you have a stick of rock and you've got that writing that goes throughout the middle and it goes all the way through the stick of rock, and no matter where you break that rock, you can see that writing and you can see what it says, often where what seaside town you've bought your stick of rock from. If you imagine that your values and your 8 principles of a whole school approach to wellbeing were running through that stick of rock, you should be able to visit any part of your school, maybe go out to the playground, crack open that stick of rock. You should be able to see compassion and kindness, hope, connection and belonging. You should go and have a look at teachers' planning and you should see the same things, the values rippling through there. You should be able to walk into the staff room, attend a staff meeting, go to a governor's meeting, crack open the stick of rock, walk into the canteen at lunchtime where the midday staff are preparing for supporting children and young people for their lunch. Those values will still be there. So wherever you go throughout your school community, these values should be evidenced within your practice and within your policy. And here we want to try and just lay some of the things we've been talking about on top of one another so that you can see how all of these things work together to complement and to reinforce your whole school and college approach. So we talked about the 5 key principles of recovery. We've talked about the 8 principles of a whole school approach to wellbeing and an emotionally healthy school. And these things completely tie up together. So in all of your 8 principles, on those 8 areas there, these 5 principles of recovery should also be visible and to be present and to be influencing the decisions that you make within each of those 8 principles. And here are some of the ways in which you can do that. And it's amazing to hear and listen to some examples from schools about ways in which they have been establishing whole school approach to wellbeing. Of course, there'll be many different examples of things that your school are doing, things that you're already doing, ideas that you might have to take these ideas further. Here are just some examples there.
Make sure we were getting the voices of
In
the
this
pupils.
video,
One of the
Stuart
first
will
things we
explain
did
how Abbott
was
School were able to get
arrange
the
for
voice of the
wellbeing
child
champions.
and
Now,
cover
those
this
are
section of
pupils
the
that
whole
would have been
school
nominated
approach.
by their peers, and that went from reception all the way up to year 6. And these pupils would meet regularly with the school's wellbeing team and come up with ideas of their own, and we would give them little tasks and things to do. But some of the ideas that have come from the pupils have been amazing, and we would have never have thought of them. So they thought of things like buddy benches during the playground. They thought of having little emotion sticks next to on their table. So rather than telling people how they feel, they could just put a little lollipop stick on the side and it might say angry or nervous or sad. So it can be a subtle way of doing things. They're helping us out with lots and lots of different things, and they are like the student voice. And we really do value their opinions a lot. It's great to have them on board.
When you're thinking about your whole school approach, it really is a journey, and this arrow represents the journey. It begins with the values and mindset and establishing the kind of school that you wish to be, and ensuring that staff are in agreement with that and they're on the same journey with you and that you're all together on that. Then how this relates to policies and practice really does depend on how your individual school decides to do that. And there's no right, wrong, or way to go about that. So some schools, you may have senior leadership team who write the policies and then say, okay, this is what we're going to be doing. This is the policy for you to follow. And so that the policy then informs the practice. Other schools might say, okay, let's try changing some things on the ground. Let's try putting some of these ideas into practice first, see how they go, see how they fit with us, see how they feel, and then after we've been doing them for a while, we'll then review our policies and we'll see, well, do our policies now match our practice, or does there need to be changes to them? And then they may update and change their policies based on the practice that's been changing. So whether or not the policies impact on the practice, or the practice impacts on the policies, there's no right or wrong way to go about that. What is important is that you remember your stick of rock, and that your values and mindset should be visible throughout your policy and practice all the way through. And what makes the difference between stuff that you do and actually whether or not it represents your values and having these specific mindsets, it's really to think carefully about what the intention is of the kinds of practices that you put into place. So, for example, we sometimes think about silent corridors as one example. So you may have a school that says we're going to have silent corridors, and the intention that we have is because we believe that children should be quiet and should be silent, that if adults dictate that, then that's what children and people should do. They should follow instructions by adults, and we believe that we wish to have a kind of a regimental type way of moving from one class to another, and this is what's going to happen. So there's your intent. So then you could think about, okay, so are those intentions in line with the values and mindset of kindness and compassion, of hope instead of negativity, and of connection and belonging? Or you may have another school that say, okay, we want to do silent corridors, and we're choosing to do silent corridors because we've listened to what the children and young people are saying. Some young people are quite intimidated and scared. The corridors are noisy. They can be quite hustle and bustly. It can be quite overwhelming. So actually we're going to give silent corridors a try to see if it can lessen the amount of stress that students experience when moving around the school. So if that's their intention, then if you think about, well, does that represent the values of compassion and kindness, of hope and of positivity for the future, building on our strengths, and of connection and belonging? So it's not so much what you do, whether you have silent corridors or not, that makes the difference. It's about actually what were your intentions when you decided to install silent corridors, and did that reflect the values and mindset? And that's what can start us really thinking about how our values and mindset are being lived and breathed, if you like, throughout school systems.
Over the next few slides, we'll be looking at staff wellbeing and how to look after the staff within your school as leaders. They'll also have some information on how staff can look after their own wellbeing as well. So this particular slide looks at different things you can organise within the school to ensure that your staff are feeling looked after emotionally and appreciated. You can also find more information on staff wellbeing in our staff wellbeing webinar. And there is also a little bit around 5 ways to wellbeing and Glasser's 5 needs in the concept index. So let's have a look at the examples that are being given here by Place to Be on their hashtag HelloYellow. So this is actually tips from staff about what makes them feel better in school and what makes them feel looked after within their schools. So we've got the idea of, number one, to cut down the amount of emails. So ensure that people aren't sending too many emails and that you're not bombarding others with too many emails either. Make sure there's all social events organised. Again, this is really important to make sure that your staff are connecting, forming those relationships, and they feel like there are people within the school that they can talk to, that they can trust, that they can also have a good time with. It's good to make sure there is that happiness and laughter within the workplace as well. So if people are feeling overwhelmed, help them prioritise, look through their to-do list, for example, or make them aware that not everything can be done in that day. Try to make sure that they're taking at least 10 minutes outside of their classroom throughout the day, whether it be they go to the staff room, whether it be they sit outside, or they go for a walk, or they go to someone else's classroom for a chat, for example. Make sure that you're giving them praise. It's really important, even if it's for something that you think they assume that for example, if you assume that they know that you're appreciative of what they've done, praise them anyway, because they may not be, and it's always really, really good to hear that you've done well from somebody else. So here, encourage them to actually listen to your praise as well. The more you say it, the more they'll get used to listening to it. Celebrating achievements, whether that be from staff or students, so it might be a weekly celebration of achievements, it could be a milestone that a member of staff has met, it could be a milestone that a student's met, it could be a breakthrough you've had with a student, it could just be something funny that's happened that week. Try to encourage your staff to stay active. You could put on exercise classes for them, so you could have fitness companies come in. Even if your staff do have to pay for it, they're probably more likely to take it up because they don't have to go home and get things done before going. They may prefer to take up these physical activities and these exercise classes because it's on their way home and they're already there. Making sure that staff really make the most of their time. So again, using themselves as connections, making sure they really check in with each other, they're there to support each other, make sure that they realise what a support network they are to each other, and maybe give them the time to do this as well. And make sure they have someone to talk to. So this is where the school wellbeing service can come in, offering their reflective discussions. Make sure that your staff are aware that that is something that's available to them. If they need to talk to someone, that is a port of call they can go to. So really promoting that as well. So this is how staff can look after their own wellbeing. So as leadership or mental health leads in your school, it's really important to make sure you're promoting this every opportunity possible, because there are very easy ways your staff can just really look after their own wellbeing. It is connect, give, take notice, keep learning, and be active. Like I said, there's more information on this in the concept index and what each of those mean. But this toolkit, if you have the time to click on it and take a look, I really suggest you do. It gives examples and ideas of ways that you can ensure that your employees are looking after their wellbeing in the workplace. So, like I say, do take time to look through this. So now we're looking at ways that you can champion the 5 ways to wellbeing within your school as a leadership team. So it's really important to create a shared sense of purpose. So this is making sure that your vision for your mentally healthy school is really clearly communicated from the offset, and make sure that you're really taking your team on your journey with you. You need to really listen. This is about listening to what your team have to say. How are they feeling about the 5 ways to wellbeing? What do they think about it? What would work for them? What do you think they won't work for them? And you really need to take on board their feedback and what they're saying. Make sure they're part of the process, because then they're much more likely to really take part and really take on board the message. Set clear expectations. This is looking at your senior leadership team and your line managers and really making sure that if they notice that their members of staff that they're managing are struggling emotionally, if they're tired, etc., they need to remind their members of staff of the 5 ways to wellbeing, ensure they're looking after themselves, and help them think about what they can do to make sure that they're looking after themselves. Set the tone. This is championing the 5 ways to wellbeing through school systems. So it might be that you've got it on your email signatures, for example. It could be notice boards, it could be visuals in the staff room, it could be that you're constantly using it and repeating it and talking about it within classes, within meetings, just champion it wherever you can. And lead by example. So this is really important. They're not going to take it on board if they don't believe that you really believe in it as well. And the way they're going to believe that you believe in it is if you're really embodying it and participating in it yourself. So it doesn't necessarily have to just be in schools. or at work, it's really important that you're doing these things in your daily life at home as well. So if you really take on board the 5 ways to wellbeing yourself, then your staff are much more likely to get on board with it with you as well. And then once your staff are on board, your students are going to be on board. And once your students are on board, then your parents and your family are on board as well. So it's really important that it starts with you and you lead by example.
Here we look at how, as school leaders, you can be the best leaders that you can be within the 5 ways. So these are ideas that you need to be thinking about for yourself. And it's not just about being a good role model to, do as you are expecting others to do. But it's also about taking care of yourself and making sure that you have the right support network around you to take care of your own well-being and your own mental health in order for you to be the kind of leader that you want to be.
So you really want to get
In
your
this
staff
slide,
on
Stuart will
board with
discuss some
anything
of
that
the
you're
ways
doing.
he
So
looks
we
after the
initially,
well-being
as
of his
part of the
staff at
wellbeing
Abbots Hall.
team's first task, we
As
wrote
always, if
a
you have
mental
the
health and
time,
wellbeing
do watch this
policy
video.
that was
If you
agreed
are
by
limited on
governors.
time, you can skip
We've
to the next
also
slide.
put in a little bit of a question into our performance management, and all that is during our performance management reviews, we ask the staff and we say, how do we feel? How do you feel we're supporting you with your mental health and well-being? And again, it just gives a little bit of importance to it, and it gives it a little bit of gravitas when you've got a policy and your SLT are asking you those sort of things in your performance management reviews. We obviously want to reduce the stigma about mental health and well-being, so we've done a lot of training with staff on mental health and well-being about recognizing poor mental health and well-being, but also how to help with positive mental health and well-being. We've done mental health first aid training, and we've also given staff the opportunity to try some different mindfulness activities. Now, they've been fun little staff meetings at times. We also make sure as an SLT that we're always available and we offer staff the support. We give them the time if they need it. We make sure that the mental health and well-being messages that we want to give out are visual around the school. So that's displays. We talk about it regularly in staff meetings. We also do a really nice thing called staff shout outs, where people can anonymously, if they wish, write down a little message and a staff shout out for any member of staff. So it could be a thank you, it just could be a little message, and that's in the staff room, and that's gone really, really, really well. Again, we just make sure that we're all looking out for each other. So if we notice somebody's having a bit of a wobbly day, we're there for them. We have these conversations. We ask them how they're feeling. Again, I think it's important that that's coming from your SLT, that you're giving time to your staff.
We're going to look at who can help you when you're starting your journey of incorporating wellbeing into your whole school approach. So you've got professionals that work within or visit your school or college. So if you've got particular professionals that you know work within your school or college who are really passionate about wellbeing, they are the people to really get on board, because they're going to make sure that this works. Looking at a network of professionals, agencies and teams that work with your setting. So this is why one of the reasons it's really key to make sure you've got good relationships with those services that work alongside you and work with you. For example, lots of Thurrock agencies and services and teams. If you've got good relationships with them and you keep good connections, you're aware of what's going on, what's out there that you can draw upon, what's out there that you can ask to come in and support you with your vision and your journey. Mental health leads in every setting. So again, make sure that you're keeping good communications with other mental health leads in other schools, because you can share good practice. One really good place that you can do this is Thurrock's Mental Health Network meetings. If you want more information, you can speak to your mental health lead, or if you are a mental health lead and you'd like more information on these, you can contact your school wellbeing service practitioner. So working with the school wellbeing service, they offer so much that can really help you build on your wellbeing journey as well. In all schools in Thurrock, they will help you promote that whole school approach to wellbeing. They can give you advice on how to do it. They've got school action plans, so they'll work with the schools to create an action plan. This will be based on results from the Brighter Future survey and meetings had with your mental health lead to assess what the needs of your school are. They've produced the Thurrock Thrive model to local support services, and they'll work with you in making sure that you've got one that is bespoke to your school as well. If you want more information on the Thrive model, you can find this in the Accessing Local Support webinar within the WER programme. Staff training and reflection groups. So the School Wellbeing Service offer a number of training sessions if you want to train your staff in understanding wellbeing and how to support students, as well as supporting themselves. They offer reflections as groups or as one-to-one for staff. This is if your staff are struggling and they need to maybe offload, if they need extra advice or support on how to help particular students. We also offer support in intervention groups of your children and young people. We have a COVID-19 support line for staff, parents and young people, and this is run alongside Thurrock EP. So this is open to anyone to talk about anything they might feel they need support with as a result of COVID-19 and the lockdown. So there's lots of people locally who can help you with your journey. It's about building those connections, building those relationships with those around you, and really knowing what's around to help you.
We have a very
In this
strong
video,
relationship as
Stuart
well
can
with
talk
the
about
school's
how
wellbeing
he has
service,
benefited from working
and they
alongside
help us out a
services
great
such
deal.
as the School
They do
Wellbeing
things,
Service.
well, I'm very much involved with the network meetings that they provide, where we have professionals from all over the borough that come together and share best practice, and we get messages about things that are coming up, and some really, really good tips and advice comes from those. The school's wellbeing service, this is probably the most important thing that I think they do for us at Abbots Hall, is provide reflective discussions. Once every term or once every few months, it's up to us when we have them, but that is an opportunity for our staff just to come and talk to a professional and just offload if they want, or talk about anything. And my staff really, really do appreciate those. The SLT go to them as well. So again, we're leading by example. And I know that staff really, really do value them immensely. They also have a massive presence at our parents' evenings, and I know they went down really well with our parents. Just being there with a little stand and telling the parents about what it is that they can provide and how we're working together as a partnership is really, really useful. We've done live webinars together for our parents about various different issues. They also provide staff training and come into school and do staff training for our staff, that they can then go and do interventions with certain kids on anger and anxiety, lots of different things. They also provide training for our pupils to become mental health champions, which is something that we're really, really excited about.
So
In
Stuart,
this
looking
video,
at
I will
all
be
of
talking to
the
Stuart
information you
about the
provided
impact
for
he
us
has
throughout the
seen
webinar on
from
your journey
incorporating mental
into
health and wellbeing
incorporating
into
mental
his
health
school
and
ethos.
wellbeing as your school ethos and really pushing the message forward. What impact have you seen it's had on your students, your staff and your parents and carers?
Wow. Well, I'd say we've got a real strong sense of belonging now. We're a real community that are all together, that staff, parents and pupils. The communication with parents has gotten much, much better. We're much more open with talking about children's issues, and they're much more open to come to us if they've got any issues at home regarding children. The children themselves, they just see it as a daily thing now, talking about mental health and well-being. Mindfulness, they talk about every day. The 5 ways to well-being, they know what those are. They use the phrases to their friends. It's okay to not be okay. They support each other amazingly. It's just fantastic. We've definitely reduced the stigma regarding mental health and well-being because of how much we talk about it. We've also seen from our new intake parents, one of the things that tipped them to come to Abbots Hall was the fact that we put so much emphasis on mental health and well-being, and that was a real factor in getting the pupil numbers into our school.
So have you noticed any impact on your academic achievement of your students since incorporating mental health and wellbeing into your school ethos?
Well, yes, there has been positive impact actually. Our SATs results have improved since we've started this journey, and also we measure children's well-being at regular times throughout the year. And we've noticed that those that come out higher on our scales do generally have better academic achievement. Now, we know that what we've seen during that measuring well-being is that some children might be here at this time of the year and then they might go down, and we can see the correlation between that and the academic. It's a really useful tool to have.
Brilliant, thank you.
One last important point to remember is that the process of embedding a whole school approach is a journey, not a quick fix or a tick box exercise. It will take commitment and positivity from the top in order to filter through to the whole school. It won't be easy, but that's why we've spoken a lot about leadership team really leading by example. Your staff need to believe that you've bought into this as a concept and an idea. And when you do, and when your staff also buy into it, your results will be so positive. It will make such a huge change to your school ethos and your environment. Just remember, you are the engines that will start the wheels turning.
Now we're at the end of this session, it's a good time just to check in with yourself and to see how you're feeling now. As we said in the beginning, the content of the WER programme can impact on how we're thinking and feeling and how it relates to us in our everyday lives. If you've been affected by anything you have read or heard about today, please seek support, either from your own support network, and there's some ideas listed on the slide here, or from additional support networks, whether that's local services or national sources of support.
As a result of watching this webinar, if you feel like you could really benefit from seeking some emotional support or some therapeutic support, or actually if you'd just like someone to blow off a little bit of steam to, or if you'd like some advice even on maybe someone you know, or just more advice on wellbeing, you can contact our Thurrock COVID-19 Wellbeing Support Line. This is run by the Educational Psychology Service and the School Wellbeing Service. It is for parents, young people, school staff during the outbreak of coronavirus. So it's just looking at giving you any form of support around wellbeing or advice around wellbeing that you might require. The phone number is 01375 652 537, or you could contact 01375 652 558. You'll be asked to leave a voicemail message and someone from the team will get back to you. Alternatively, you could email the helpline at sws@thurrock.gov.uk. If you didn't want to use that as an option, we do have Thurrock and Brentwood Mind. They offer lots of support in terms of mental health and wellbeing. You may be able to access therapeutic support. We also have Inclusion Thurrock. This is for adults who may require therapeutic support also. And I know that they are really, really on board in terms of helping school staff at the moment. So if you would like someone to talk to for regular sessions, they would be good ideas to contact as well. If you want to learn a bit more about what options there are to you in terms of support locally in Thurrock, do make sure you watch our webinar on accessing local support, because it looks at what's available in regards to the Thurrock Thrive model, and it looks at what support might be appropriate for what kinds of needs.